Okay, good evening, residents and councillors. I'd like to call the Township of Wainfleet regular council meeting of February the 15th, 2022 to order, and we'll now play our national anthem. We'd like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples, acknowledging the One Bowl and Spoon Treaty. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay, I have one. It's item 9D, I in planning, and I'll be excusing myself for that item. Okay, Mayor's announcements. Please note that meeting proceedings are being broadcast live, recorded, and made available through the Township website and youtube.com. Administrative offices will be closed on February the 21st to recognize Family Day. February 22nd will be the official reopening of the Township administrative offices for drop-in services. A resumption of the Township's drinking water quality testing program will also take place February 22nd. Water testing kits can be picked up during regular business hours and dropped off Monday to Thursday, 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. and no later than 9 a.m. on Fridays. Lastly, I would like to mark a very special personal milestone in Wainfleet as Frank DeWright will be celebrating his 90th birthday on February the 16th. Always a big contributor to helping and serving others, Frank has been a director for the Wainfleet Fall Fair for many years and can often be found in or around the poultry barn. He was a volunteer with Marshville Festival and many other community events and past member of the Township's Committee of Adjustment. And Frank's so well thought of by all who know him and a true asset to the Wainfleet community. Happy birthday on behalf of myself and all councillors. Frank, happy birthday. Are there any councillor remarks? Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for staff's benefit, I'm going to be away for the 29th meeting, which is the regular meeting after the three special meetings. And I believe the mayor's going to be away on the 19th of April. I'm just wondering if you want to consider moving the 29th meeting to April 5, when both of us would be there, and dispensing with the 19th. Just a thought.
Yeah, and just officially on that, I think I'm leaving April the 12th to the 30th, so that's there.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, what we can do is we can see if we can make that happen. We'll do that investigation, make sure everyone's available, all the resources are available, and if so, we'll make that change.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments, remarks by councillors? Okay, seeing none. Adoption of our previous council minutes. Are there any comments, corrections? Okay, that looks good. So the motion being the minutes of the regular meeting of council held January 25th, 2022 be adopted as circulated. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan, Councillor Gilmore. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Delegations, we have one delegation listed on our agenda this evening. Sean Whiteley has submitted a delegation request with a proposal to bring a Junior A hockey team to Wainfleet for the 2022/2023 season. So Sean, you have 10 minutes to make your presentation to council, which will be followed by an opportunity for council to ask questions of you or to provide their comments. And your time starts now. Are you there, Sean?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, so like the mayor said, the Niagara Hockey Group is looking to bring a Junior A hockey franchise to the town of Wainfleet for the start of next season. We want to be a community team. The Niagara Hockey Group will be highly involved in the local community, attending community events, making guest appearances at the public schools, and being involved with minor hockey, helping run practices and clinics. We'll also look at running youth hockey skills camps and over the Christmas break and during March break where available. We're looking at running a youth literacy program in the town of Wainfleet, youth skills hockey clinics and camps for youth, skate with the team events, and a winter ball hockey extravaganza on the land in Wainfleet in the parking lot maybe next season. Our ownership group's made up of myself, Tony Mistriani, and I'm working on two local owners that live in Wainfleet currently. I'm in discussions with them. So the ice time is the season runs from mid-September to first week of April is the finals. When I was talking to Jeremy, he said the ice goes in a little bit later in Wainfleet, so we would just do the first couple weeks on the road if that had to be, which isn't a problem. 28 weeks, we're looking at 3 practice times per week. We would use the time, we don't want to interrupt minor hockey, so we would use a time in the afternoon. We're looking at 2:30 to 4:30, or sorry, 2:30 to 4, hour and a half practices 3 times a week. And then we would need 21 home games. Our proposal is for Friday night, 7 to 10 p.m., but if we had to do Sunday night, like we discussed with Richard and the rest of the group earlier, Sunday night wouldn't be a problem either. If we could get the minor hockey rate for our practices, that would be great. If not, not a problem. And then obviously the regular ice time rate for the prime time. The dressing room, we've been in our first meeting with Richard and the group. We're still looking into the portable, all-contained dressing rooms with stalls. Just waiting on a price from the company from Grimsby. Once we get to the specs, we'll get them to Richard and their group to see if it's viable. Concessions, the Niagara Hockey Group would run the concessions throughout the entire hockey season. We'd also be able to sell game tickets, season tickets, jerseys, and merchandise out of that location because they were saying there is no location for a merchandise area, which is fine. Advertising, the Niagara Hockey Group would sell all rink boards and wall boards, giving 20% back to the town of Wainfleet each year. Also have an opportunity to sell ice logos before the ice goes back in September. The marketing and branding. Marketing in a small knit community will be very important. We have a marketing plan in place where we execute the sale of season tickets, single game tickets, merchandise, jersey auctions, 50/50 draws, and other items. The new team logo and overall branding has to be visible throughout the community. The Niagara Hockey Group will begin with the Name the Team contest if approved. We'll promote the brand, the team, the players, and staff within the community and on all social media platforms, as well as in print media, print, radio, and TV. Signage so we're looking for signage at the arena promoting home schedules, tickets, social media, and website. Obviously, costs will all be on us. Billboards around the town promoting the new team. Schedule posters throughout the town and surrounding areas. And then pockets, we would look at putting pocket schedules inside local businesses within the town. Team mascot, Niagara Hockey Group will have one of the top mascots in the league, which will be at all home games and community events. Much like the Ice Dogs mascot, once a team is announced, we will have a named mascot contest for all fans to take part in. So some of our players will be from out of town, so we'll be looking for team billets. Families in Wainfleet and surrounding area to billet players from out of town for the season. Families will receive season passes, jersey, and monthly stipend. Ticket pricing, we're looking at a few different options. Season tickets, we're looking at $168 for the whole season, save 20% if you bought a season ticket. 5 and 10 game flex packs, and then single game tickets, we're looking at $10 for adults and $7 for students and seniors. We want to make a community team, so all home games will be fan-friendly. Niagara Hockey Group will make every home game a special event. We want to have all fans engaged in your hometown team and make it fan-friendly for all those in attendance each night. We'll have the following promos throughout the season: special promo nights, special jersey auctions, sponsor giveaways, fan contests, ceremonial puck drops, between period minor hockey games, guest national anthem singers, second period shootout, 50-50 draws and raffles, and more. And then every night will be a promo night. I won't name all 21 of them, so I don't have much time, but some stuff like Superheroes Night and Teddy Bear Toss Night and Star Wars Night and 105.7 Community Night and Minor Hockey Night, Local Business Night. We'll have each one of our 21 home games will have a theme to them. And then the last page of the proposal is obviously sponsorship opportunities. So we'll have a group in place that will go out and sell sponsorship, whether it be title sponsor, presenting sponsor, platinum, gold, silver, bronze sponsors, or just game day or other sponsorship opportunities. So like I said, Wainfleet's a great, with the redoing of the arena, it's a great location. It's I live in Pelham myself. Wainfleet keeps on growing, much like Pelham did since I lived here since 2005. So I think Wainfleet's in the partnership with the town would be a great opportunity to put a junior team in the town. One of the only towns in all of Niagara that don't have a junior hockey team.
Okay, thank you. You're done, Mr. Whiteley?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. If you'll just stay there, please. We'll ask Council if there's any questions of our delegate in regards to this. Councillor Van Vliet.
Make this closer. Sean, I'd like to thank you for the presentation. For clarity, I am a hockey mom, a hockey wife, a hockey grandma, and my son went all the way to junior B. I have a few questions. For the first one is, why Wainfleet, and aren't you currently in Noddle?
No, we're not in Niagara Lake right now. No, this is a new franchise. So we bought the Niagara Whalers that was in Port Colborne. And Port Colborne is, they have the AAA Admirals there right now in the location where the Whalers were.
Yeah,
So this is a brand new ownership group.
Okay, because when I looked the name up, it said Niagara on the Lake. So I guess that's my wrong. Okay, so the concession stand is usually tendered out. So anybody within the township can tender it.
Yeah.
So it's not I don't know if that's something that we would just give out to somebody. So that's one. The advertising. Go ahead.
We would look to tender it, and obviously, and we'd pay the whatever it would cost to run it each month. That's not a problem. I understand how the town works. So.
Okay. Yeah. The advertising of the boards right now, I don't know what the price is anymore, but I used to know how much it was per board, and that money just went straight to the township. So I don't understand why we would only get 20% of that.
So when I went on the tour with James, I think there's 4 rink boards sold. We can sell up to 48 rink boards in the arena. So a lot of the arenas in Niagara region are tendered out to a third party, and they give. So Tim in Pelham gives 20% back to the town, and he has the opportunity to sell both arenas rink boards actually. So that's where I got the idea from. I mean, if it has to be more than 20, we don't have a problem with that. But we would do all the legwork and sell all the rink boards and give a cut back to the town.
Okay.
And that can be negotiated. That's not a problem.
Okay, I have a couple more questions. Friday nights, we have pretty established renters on Friday nights, straight up till, I do believe, 11 o'clock. So I'm not sure how that would work out. And the other one is the portable dressing rooms. We do not have the infrastructure for that, and where you're proposing to put it is a septic tank. So I'm not sure how that would work. And my last question is, why Wainfleet? Like, it's a small arena.
Yeah, so Tony, my partner, he's actually lives in British Columbia. His town has 5,000 people. They average 500 fans a night. I know we can't get 500 in Wainfleet, but honestly, I think we can get 200, 300, which would be more than most junior B teams in the Niagara region. A lot of the towns won't take on another junior team. In our discussions with different towns, and that's why Wainfleet was the one. It's close by to me, myself, and around Pelham and Welland, and it's kind of in between everything, right? Port Colborne, where my daughter plays hockey. So that's why we when I was discussing with James Federico about Wainfleet, and I said he redid the arena there in 2018, it's a great facility, and the town keeps on growing. So yeah, that's why Wainfleet.
Okay, I have just one more question. And maybe it's a comment. You're not sanctioned by Hockey Canada or anyone, are you?
No, the GMHL is considered an outlaw league.
It's an outlaw league, correct?
Yeah, it's been an outlaw league since 2005.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's 20 teams in the league.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other
Yeah, you're
questions?
welcome.
I have some because some of this I don't understand if everyone else is finished. Junior A, to me, the first thing that pops in my head is ice dogs. Can you tell me the difference here between this Junior A and that Junior A?
So there's a few different levels of hockey in Ontario. Obviously, there's Junior A OHL, there's Junior A OJHL, there's Junior A GMHL, and there's Junior B and Junior C, and then senior men's, obviously. So yeah, it's a lower level than OHL. The OHL kids are going to the show. A lot of them, right, are going pro.
Right.
A few of our kids will go pro. When the Whalers won it the Port Colborne Whalers won it a couple times. They had a bunch of European players, a bunch of American players, and the rest were Canadian. So our goal is to have a lot of local talent on our team. And obviously we're gonna have to have a few from outside, but our goal is to have a lot of local talent.
Okay, thank you. You said there's a town in British Columbia that they get 500 a game. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's where Tony lives, and they have 6,000 people in their town. Okay,
and what would you anticipate for here? And I'm not even sure what our seating capacity is. Probably, Sherry? Councilor Van Vliet,
200 to 300 I counted.
200-300?
Yeah. So.
Okay, no, that's just some curiosity on my part there. So, any other questions, Councilor Van Vliet?
Sean, I have one more question. You had said about putting the logo, your team logo, on our ice. We already have a team logo on our ice. Like our local town, like our local team, the Wainfleet Wild, generally puts their logo on the ice.
Yeah.
So
that's fine. If you look at Port Colborne's ice, they got 8 logos on the ice right now, right? So if you go to Niagara Falls, they got the same thing, right? So it doesn't have to be in the middle. Councilor Van Vliet, it could be on the blue, inside the blue line, outside the blue line. Yeah, it doesn't have to be the main logo on the ice. And you really only do it once a year, once before the ice is put in, right? So.
And before playoffs, but okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so if there's no more questions of our presenter, thank you very much, Mr. Whiteley. And we can now have a discussion amongst ourselves here on the validity of bringing this hockey team to Wainfleet and make a motion out of that discussion. So does anybody want to start off? Councillor Gilmore, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I think first thing we should get is a comprehensive staff report about the pros and cons and everything that they know, because all we know is what we heard in about 8 minutes. So if we get that for the next meeting, then I think maybe we'll have something to talk about.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion, or is that what we just send that to staff requesting a report? Councillor McClellan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I agree with Councillor Gilmore. Let's hear what staff has to say. Maybe the dressing rooms, we heard they're on top of the septic bed, but maybe there's been discussion with Richard already and they go somewhere else. Let's hear what staff has to say. It's interesting. I don't know that there's a lot of interesting things come here, but they don't all get approved. So let's hear what staff has to say and go from there.
Okay, so Councillor Gilmore, that'll be your motion. Have a seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan. Any other discussion? Item B referred to staff to be researched. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Okay, we move into, thank you, Mr. Whiteley.
Thank you for having me.
We'll move into admin staff reports now, please. And the first one will be Mr. Our CAO for COVID.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. I will be brief because there have been significant changes to the actual COVID regulations since the time this report was originally drafted, with the province announcing it is fast-tracking some of the reopening plans. For the most part, I guess I draw your attention to the date originally identified in the report as February 21st, and that has been moved forward to later this week. I believe it's the 16th or the 17th. 16th, I believe. 17th. So the February 21st date has been moved to February 17th, and then the March 14th date referenced in the report has been moved forward to March 1st. That said, the township had sort of commenced its operational plans based on the original February 21st date and March 14th date. The February 21st date, our plans to officially reopen the office will continue on the day following Family Day. We are unable to juggle our things fast enough in order to get everything in place for reopening this week, but we are officially reopening Town Hall to the general public without need for an appointment starting next week. Likewise, starting next week, we will have our drinking water quality testing program back up and running as it was earlier prior to the COVID restrictions. So I highlight those two for everyone's attention. The other point that I would make is that vaccination clinics, the major clinics that had been operating in Niagara Falls are scaling back, and the Niagara Regional Health Unit is now moving towards more community-based clinics. And to that end, we have held a number of clinics already this month here in Wainfleet, including February 3rd and 4th at the Firefighters Community Hall, February 12th at St. Elizabeth's School, and again yesterday at the Community Hall. And I'm pleased to announce that there's another date in February on the 28th that will again be held at the Wainfleet Community Hall. So those clinics continue to operate in full force and effect, I guess. That pretty well summarizes the report at this time. If anyone has any questions, I'll try to answer, but otherwise, things continue to improve slowly.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a mover seconder to receive that report, please? Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. Any discussion? Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Will, can you update the current status of the arena effective Thursday and the future status effective March 1?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. I'm not sure if Richard's on the line and he's able to jump in, but we have the arena is operating. It has been operating since the first step of the reopening back in January. And at this stage, the gathering limits in the arena are still being limited to some extent. I have Richard on the line and hopefully he can fill in the gaps for me.
Through your worship to Councillor, to all council, yeah, the present outlining timelines that are put out by the province, as long as nothing changes, we will follow exactly what the province has dictated, unless there's anything further that comes from our local public health, which includes, as far as the passports, they'll be eliminated as requested by the province on the 14th. The capacity limits are pretty much where we're at now. I mean, we're at the limits. We will be scaling down some of the available change rooms. We'll be able to put more people in the change rooms, and we'll eliminate some of that extra staff checking for passports on the 14th. But we will follow the recommendations of the province and any additional recommendations that may come from public health. But our plan is to reopen as safely the way we are, and we're currently open now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again.
Yeah.
As the manager of operations noted, the capacity limits are currently and will be 50% seating in the arena for the time being. We also have one thing to keep in mind is there is an order by the Regional Medical Officer of Health regarding vaccination certificates. So notwithstanding that the province has released its requirement, until the medical officer pulls his order that requires everyone to provide proof of vaccination on entry, we are obligated to adhere to that or the Regional Medical Officer of Health's order as well. In addition, I believe the medical officer's order includes restrictions on food and drink in the arena at this time, so that will continue until that order is modified by the medical officer of health. But as Richard said, all other requirements established by the province that do not sort of tie into the medical officer's rules, we will be in compliance with the provincial rules in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Richard referred to March 14th, wasn't it? March 1st is what I think we were supposed to, the advancement of it. Richard, I think you said March 14th, but has that not been moved up to March 1st?
Yeah, I apologize. I believe I was looking at his the CEO's report and it said the 14th, and then I realized, wait a minute, it was moved up to the 1st. But
yeah.
Yes, you're right, Your Honor.
No problem. Any other questions or comments on this, Councillor Gilmore?
So just so I'm clear, are you saying that that the regional MOH is planning to trump the province effective March 1? Is that what you're saying?
Unless through you, Mr. Mayor, the local medical officers of health do have the ability to put rules in place that differ from the provincial rules if the circumstances warrant. The current rules that are in place were put in place by the medical officer of health in December of last year and have continued and remain in effect until they're repealed. Now, the new instructions that the province has issued came out 1 day ago, it came out yesterday. And certainly everybody is in the process of revisiting and reevaluating the rules that they have in effect. So not only is the township looking at our rules, but the medical officer of health will be looking at his in the coming weeks. But his rules do remain in force and effect until repealed by him. I wonder if our CEMC, the fire chief, might be able to provide any additional comment or thoughts on that. That may help clarify as well.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor and all of council. So as the CAO and Director of Operations has said, the Medical Officer of Health for Niagara Region, similarly to how our bylaws would go above and beyond any provincial act or regulation, also has the ability to pass and enforce rules. In this case, under the Provincial Reopening of Ontario Act, in there does provide local medical officers of health the ability to instruct or direct municipalities or operators of recreational facilities. In this particular case, the letter of instructions still applies, even though the province has scaled back theirs. So for instance, the 15-minute time limit in change rooms, mandatory vaccinations for all over the age of 12, and the food and drink are all items that are listed in that letter of instruction. So until the Niagara Region Medical Officer of Health lifts that letter of instruction, those rules still apply, similarly to how local bylaws go above and beyond provincial regulation sometimes.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I'm going to throw this out here because, to me, the province trumps our local medical officer of health. As we've seen before, the province came out and our medical officer of health was the only person who went against the province. what repercussions would we be prone to if we opted to go with the provincial rules as opposed to our local medical officer health?
Mr. Mayor, I see the fire chief is still on the line and able to perhaps speak to this.
Thank you.
Yeah, so within the Reopening of Ontario Act, the letters of instruction that are issued by the local medical officers of health, that's actually built into the provincial act. So really, the local letter of instruction is a part of the provincial act. So it's not like there's one or the other. In the case of us not following the letter of instruction, it would make the township in contravention of the Reopening of Ontario Act, which could put us in a position. Obviously, there will be, staged or phased in levels of enforcement. But as a corporation and an employer, we could face up to $100,000.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get that out there to explore that. Any other questions on the COVID report before we vote? Motion's on the floor. Seeing none, all in favor of receiving the report? And that is carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to Admin Staff Report 005-2022, Restricted Acts of Council, the lame duck periods. And I'll look to our clerk to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to all of council. In the year of a municipal election, it has been the practice of council to delegate authority for defined restricted acts not authorized for council decision-making if the council is in a lame duck situation after nomination day and or after voting day. This report addresses possible 2022 lame duck circumstances and recommends approval of a bylaw to delegate financial and staffing authority to the CAO to ensure the uninterrupted continuity of municipal business during a potential lame duck period. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Motion being that ASR 005-2022, respecting restricted acts of council, be received, and that council approve a bylaw to delegate financial and staffing authority to the chief admin officer for the period of nomination day, August 19th, 2022 at 2 p.m. to November the 14th, 2022 at 11:59 p.m. as presented in Appendix A to this report. I have a mover seconder to put it on the floor for discussion. Councillor McClellan, Councillor Cridland. Is there any discussion? Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So on this is just regular business. If there's a large purchase or something, that doesn't go just to the CAO to make that decision, does it?
I'll look to the Madam Clerk for that, or the CAO. They're looking at each other, figuring out who's going to answer it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, the key thing is with respect to purchasing, for example, in amounts of in excess of $50,000. The lame duck provisions of the Act apply to those types of purchases only if they are unbudgeted. If they are a budgeted expense, then council does not relinquish its authority over them. But in the event of, say, an emergency situation or an emergency purchase, such as a snowplow failing completely, and council's in a lame duck position, it is unable legally to make the decision to purchase that unbudgeted expenditure at that time, in which case the authority would, if this delegation authority bylaw goes through, then it would fall to the CAO to be able to authorize that sort of expenditure. That being said, from past practice, the authorization by the CAO of that purchase would not be made without notifying council. However, the final decision of go or no go would rest with the CAO as opposed to council.
Councillor McClellan, go ahead.
Follow-up question then. So if by some chance this fire hall hasn't been passed by then, do you have the authority then to say go ahead and build it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. If you're talking the fire hall is a budgeted item, something that has been budgeted previously, remains in the budget and has been approved through a budgetary process. Therefore, it would not normally fall under the lame duck provisions, as noted in sections C and D of the Restricted Acts section of the Municipal Elections Act.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing none, it's on the floor. All in favor of that motion? And opposed? In favor? Okay, it's unanimous in favor, and that is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to our franchise agreement with Enbridge Gas, and we'll look to our CAO to speak to that again, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council. Late last year, Council considered a staff report regarding a request from Enbridge Gas to extend a franchise agreement to continue to provide natural gas supplies to the residents of the township. The process to do that is very closely regulated by the Ontario Energy Board, and at the time, Council approved proceeding with the new franchise agreement. And what this memo was saying is that the process has been followed to date with a hearing held by the Ontario Energy Board. They have approved the proposal, and they are now coming back to the township to finalize the process, which involves giving final reading to the enacting bylaw and then executing the necessary agreements and then returning them to Enbridge and the Ontario Energy Board for filing and storage.
Thank you, Mr. Colossus. So motion is the memorandum from the Chief Administrative Officer respecting the franchise agreement with Enbridge Gas Incorporated be received as information. Mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Cridland. Is there any discussion? Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Does Enbridge have any plans of widening their coverage at all? Does anybody know?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, none that I'm aware of. However, any sort of inquiries regarding extending service is something that can certainly be made. And I see that the operations manager has come online, and he may be able to provide some additional comment regarding that.
Yes, through your worship to all members of council. Yes, there are occasions where natural gas is being extended within our township. They submit drawings and request municipal consent to allow those services to go in, and we usually get a chance to review their plans and make alterations if it, if it hinders anything, for instance, municipal drains, etc. But they have expanded 2 sections now, and they're doing additional repair work throughout the township. But periodically, we do get municipal consent applications to expand their service. Where exactly is, I haven't seen their capital works for the year, but to date, I think there's the 2 have just been finalized now. They should be done restoration in the spring, and that was on Daily Ditch, was one major expansion.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Councillor, are you done, Councillor Van Vliet?
Yeah, because I've been looking at the map, and most of the gas coverage is only on paved roads or highly populated. So I was just wondering if they were just going to expand. I don't want my road paved, but just anywhere else besides, there. And there is gas halfway up the road.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClellan.
So I have 2 questions. If somebody did want gas down the road, so they talked to you, Richard, and you put the thing forward, because years ago they came partway down Green Road and then stopped and never finished it. And they did the part that was least populated and never finished to the north. So I know I've had a number of neighbors ask about it, and it's never been done. I think there was a problem with the previous railroad owner. And then then my other question on this, seeing as we're on this about Enbridge, Enbridge is holding up a report to us for Gents Road. Is there any way somebody in our staff can send a letter and say, hey, get this done so we get this price and then we can put this contract out to tender? Because every day it's sitting, it's costing us money. So I don't know if that's something our CAO can handle, or should it be Mr. Nan, or both?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, by all means, we can put together a letter to go out to our contacts at Enbridge to expedite the sort of support of our own Gents Road Bridge project or other projects we might have underway. As to sort of individual sort of property owner inquiries about the extension of service, by all means, members of the public are sort of free to contact the utility to express interest in sort of having services extended. As a utility, they do sort of have sort of financial benchmarks and financial thresholds required in order to sort of provide that service. So if there is enough interest that is displayed by, for example, a stretch of road or an area of the township that is currently underserviced by Enbridge, there may be, enough interest for them to revisit that. We will certainly include that in any correspondence that we do to them to sort of see if there is any availability or opportunity to get expanded service within the township.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, the report is on the floor to receive as information. All in favor of receiving that for information, and that is carried. Thank you. We move on to our Community and Development Services staff reports, and we'll look to Ms. Earle to give a brief overview of her memo. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and to the rest of Council, good evening. The first memo is to appoint a municipal bylaw enforcement officer, and our new chief building official, Mr. Benjamin Hopkins, began his employment last week with the township. So really it's just normal practice for the municipality to appoint the CBO as a municipal bylaw enforcement officer. So he'll be able to enforce all bylaws, obviously passed by council, for the corporation, the Township of Wainfleet. Typically it would be more of a backup or an emergency situation. So Ben is more than fully capable of being an enforcement officer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Motion being the memorandum from the Manager of Community and Development Services respecting the appointment of a municipal bylaw enforcement officer be received as information. A mover, seconder to put that on the floor, Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? None. That is carried. Thank you. Now we'll move into memorandum regarding the status of the regional settlement area boundary review, and we'll look to our Ms. Earle to speak to that again, please.
Thank you. And again, good evening, Mr. Mayor, and to members of council. As the province establishes minimum population employment forecasts, it's the region's role to plan for these minimum forecasts and assign them appropriately to local municipalities. Based on the provincial methodology, the region's completed a significant forecasting amount of work to plan for the growth until the year 2051. It's the region's role to make the settlement area boundary changes, which is only permitted during the review of a new official plan. As such, the provincial growth management requirements are currently being implemented through the region's municipal comprehensive review. The rural settlement area boundary review for the hamlet expansions determines where the growth will occur and if additional land is required. It has also reviewed candidate lands adjacent to the existing hamlet boundaries to determine the most appropriate location for these expansions. So what does this mean for Wainfleet? The region's forecasting work identified that Wainfleet's population is projected to reach 7,730 people by the year 2051. So in order to accommodate for this growth, including projected employment rates, the region calculated that an additional 75 hectares of land is needed in the rural settlement or hamlet areas in the township. Wainfleet Council identified a number of parcels for expansion consideration through the review of that previous local official plan amendment for the lands adjacent to the hamlet boundaries of Wellandport and Chambers Corners back in the fall of 2020. The region also received 2 private owner requests for expansion consideration. In addition to the private and municipal requests that have been included, the region reviewed additional candidate lands needed in order to meet future growth needs. 4 hamlets in Wainfleet have been recommended by the region for expansion. The review also identified a few minor technical adjustments that were needed. Chambers Corners and Austrihan Corners expansions will accommodate the forecasted rural employment growth. In addition to a small expansion in Wellandport, the Wainfleet Village Hamlet will play a more significant role in accommodating the future residential growth, which is identified in our official plan policies. Please note that these additional lands that are being brought into the settlement areas can maintain their current agricultural operation and existing uses until such a time that future development is proposed by the private landowners. The region's work on the rural settlement area boundary expansions will supply the Township of Wainfleet with a sufficient amount of land to accommodate the required future residential growth and job creation over the next 30 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll put a motion on the floor that the memorandum from the Manager of Community and Development Services respecting the status of the regional settlement area boundary review be received as information. A mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for discussion. Councillor McClellan, Councillor Gilmore, okay, and discussion. Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. I hardly know where to start. We've been dealing with some of these adjustments. We've been trying to get done for back in the last term, and we were in a situation a long time ago where the province left some of our land without designation. We said, okay, make it this. The region said, no, you can't do that. We can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do anything. The next thing I find out about, after Councillor Cridlin called me about this and probably some other things, was this report that I really knew nothing about. And I said, where did you get this information? And she directed me where I could look at this, and I look at it, and all of a sudden now everything that we were told a few years ago we couldn't do, we can do. Plus we can also do pave over Paradise over 80 more acres down the Bell Road and everywhere else that people, they didn't even ask for it. One of these properties is owned by a cash cropper who I actually currently now work part-time for. So I asked him, did you request this change? No, he didn't. All he did was get a letter in the middle of December saying that part of his land was now proposed to be redesignated to rural employment. But he never asked for that change, and I'm not sure about the people on along Bell Road. But I guess the point is, well, I have several points. The first one being, after I went through this whole exercise, I called the office and spoke to the CAO and said that the report somewhat caught staff by surprise too, and yet I still read in the report that it says staff work closely with the region. So I'm having a little trouble squaring those two comments, but the CAO can explain that to me. But the point is, all this was done, and I don't think any of us in this room had a clue this was happening. All that happened was they sent letters out to landowners saying, you know, now you can do new things with your land. But they didn't ask any of us whether this was a good idea, a bad idea, or any idea. And there's no reference to their other crazy idea about converting part of the Wainfleet Bog to prime agricultural land and converting part of the northeast corner to prime agricultural land from rural. That's not even referenced in here, so I don't know what happened to those ideas. I'm just at a total loss to figure out exactly what is going on at the Niagara region. I've been at that point for a few decades, but now it's kind of come to a head. But like, who's driving the bus? Because all I've heard about from people over the years is that Wainfleet is, quote, the sole planning authority for the township. I think that nothing is farther from the truth. I don't think we have one bit of jurisdiction by the sounds of it, because now the region has decided that all this land can be designated whether we want it or not. Why in the world you would convert 80 acres of the best strip of agricultural land in the Niagara region and leave land in the northeast corner and down closer to the lake that you can barely grow hay on, and try to designate part of the bog as prime agricultural land is beyond me. And if we want to add more houses somewhere, at the very least it should be infill along roads that we already have, because as we know, I mean, Marshville is fine. It's been designated for 40 years, but when you have to put in roads in property, that takes up acreage that you can't use. All these hamlet lots that are currently vacant are vacant because there's no roads there. And that takes a lot of money, and it also takes a lot of land. And yet none of the land along our roads, if we have to give up something, we might as well give up strips along already established roads. But why designate 80 acres in the middle of nowhere with no road access? There's one road through there, the Bell, and they border 2 unopened road allowances, which would have to be built up by someone, maybe us, maybe not. But even if we don't, if we come off our existing roads, you have to put roads in there. That takes up land. It's ludicrous. I'm most upset that it all happened under the cover of darkness, similar to the way the province came in and designated almost every bush lot in Wainfleet as a PSW on a Friday night, and then they left. And then they told everybody, now you have a PSW, you can't do this, you can't do that. Like, I just want to know who's driving the bus, and who knew what and when, and what we can do about it.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to look to Ms. Earle for any comment there, please.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to address Councillor Gilmore's question and comments. So the question that I'm hearing is who's driving the bus, but I did want to make a note that on many occasions the region has met individually with planning staff at each municipality to discuss these growth forecasts. They've had multiple public information center meetings. They've had dozens of meetings with other interested parties. This has been going on for a few years. They've had local council workshops that councillors around this table today have been in attendance at. We have taken back and forth the council's requests as to which lands wanted to be included in the hamlets. We were happy that the region obliged with those kinds of requests. Some of the questions that you also raised were about why the 80 acres along Bell Road. And as part of the region's SABRE review, there was a quite significant amount of criteria that had to be met for these lands to be considered for future growth. Number one, future growth needs to be directed to the settlement areas. That's our hamlets. So which hamlets could accommodate the future growth? They looked to us first, which our official plan directs future growth to focus on the Wainfleet Village hamlet specifically. The rural settlement evaluation criteria included a number of items that they looked at, like the rural character, the support for agriculture, hydrogeology, the natural environment, agricultural impact, and land use context with a lot of local knowledge. They looked for lands that had the least amount of land use compatibility concerns, the least amount of core natural heritage features that weren't going to be impacted, and so on. You mentioned a couple of items about the prime agricultural lands designation. That's a separate item. That's not what we're discussing today. Today, we are just talking about the expansions to the settlement area boundaries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just a point on 3 of those that we approved 3 years ago. The Wellandport one, the one at Chambers Corners, and the one down on Burnaby, which we approved. And then the region came down and said no. I have been pushing the region on all 3 of those. With the same thing you're saying, Councillor Gilmore, that it's what we want. We want that for our community. And so in that sense, the region listened to us and did give that to us. It was a surprise to me as well, but this 80 acres over here came out of nowhere. I'm not sure, I wasn't made aware of anything on that, but I was pushing for those other ones and constantly saying that, you know, we need some autonomy over where we develop. And those are ones that we originally approved and were denied, but now they're back on the table again, so which is a good thing. But also with that, we got some extra here that we don't necessarily want. So Councillor Gilmore, you have any further comment?
I'm not objecting to what we knew about. I fully support what we wanted to do in Wellandport. It's the right thing to do there, in my opinion, not everybody's, but in mine. And yeah, Burnaby Road, I mean, he wanted more, and they said, you know, you can have this much. So that's all that's all okay. It's all the rest of it that, like, I'm not sure who went to any of these meetings. It wasn't me, because I certainly would have been in tune to this kind of thing going on. I knew nothing. I don't know if anybody else wants to disclose what they knew, but I'm surprised to hear that staff, quote, worked closely, and then when I spoke to the CAO, I got the word that it was a surprise. I can't square those 2 comments. I'm sorry, but we have to figure out, I mean, really now we can't do anything. The cat's out of the bag. Because now they're going to change that, but obviously we're not the sole planning authority for the municipality. So I think that point needs to be made loud and clear to everybody who thinks we are.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I actually received some comments from people as well who received letters who their land is being changed to natural environmental system. There's a natural environmental system feature on their land that wasn't there before, and now it is. So, and they didn't know anything about it, and they just got this letter, and I didn't know anything about it, so I contacted staff and asked them about it, and they just said that the resident can, you know, go to the meetings and whatnot. But I'm with Councillor Gilmore on this one, because I know exactly the land we're talking about on Bell Road, and that is prime agricultural land. There's no way, you get there by Bell Road or a mud road, Emerson Lane. So this makes no logical sense when there's a landlocked field, like right coming into the village. That would have made more sense. That there's already infrastructure there. Like Bell Road's not the best road on any day, so it doesn't make any sense to me either. And just to answer your question, Councillor Gilmore, I knew nothing about this either.
Okay, Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, there's a similar sized piece of property up at Beckett's Bridge. It's already been commercial. It's sitting abandoned right now. That easily could have gone into this residential, this agricultural. It's already there. There's nothing been done to it in the 40 years I've lived in town. It's just sitting there. There's a house on it boarded up. There's an abandoned gas station. That's a piece of property that would have served the town a whole lot better and leave this prime agricultural land alone. As Councilor Gilmore said, the northeast corner, I live there. Nobody wants to farm it. That's a place that should be put on, fill in around the roads that are there. You're already picking up garbage, you're always plowing the road. Pick up your taxes where you can there, because there isn't enough land left there to farm, and what was there, the farmers wouldn't farm it. Our own guys wouldn't go there and farm it.
Okay, thank you. So I guess the question is, how do we push back to the region on this to express our dissatisfaction with that 80 acres? Because the other parts we asked for, and we got them. That's great. But that 80 acres of prime agricultural land, which I thought the province was protecting all our agricultural land, how do we send this back and ask for a change? Councillor Cridland.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I think you were directing something to staff, though, so I'll just wait if you want to get an answer.
No, I'm just putting it out there right now. It's something that we have to look at, or how we're going to do that steps. But please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm just maybe on your last point. When I looked at it, I'm really disappointed that we didn't have all the context. So my vote was different on the pieces that are approved. And again, all due respect, that council decided on those 3 pieces to go to the region to be discussed and decided on. But when we looked at those pieces, I didn't have all the information that is available now in this report around our inventory. So that to me puts us in a position where we might have been able to make a better decision had the comments that Councillor McClellan's making about our existing commercial inventory unused before we jump at prime agriculture on the northeast corner on Chambers Corner. So one of the things I was going to ask through you to staff then, do I understand that this is still a recommendation of the Niagara region? And I think, Lindsay, you could, the Director of Communications, could confirm that quickly.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to answer Councillor Cridland's, this is a recommendation going to the Planning and Development, the Region's Planning and Development Committee shortly. So all of the Sabre lands for both Wainfleet and West Lincoln are included in that rural Sabre exercise. And was there a second question to that one?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, through you, Mayor, I'll just continue. And then am I correct that February 24th is another public open house for then seeing, I guess, this component and any other components of the draft plan? Is that correct?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The public open house for the region's new official plan is scheduled for February 24th. That will be followed by the statutory public meeting for the official plan at the Planning and Development Committee meeting. That will be in April. So the region's aiming at having a spring adoption, and then it'll go to the province for approval.
May I continue? Thank you. Thank you. Again, I just want to, we're all sharing the pieces that were not have been available to, and it's come to us in a way that we weren't expecting. I do realize that this is a planning process that's probably, once in a 50-year cycle. So, but also from my point of view, I did follow this along, and I did attend one of the meetings that the mayor was lobbying for us based on council's decision. So there was a process that it was a direct result of council, even though, I may have held a different viewpoint. I wanted to make sure I was participating on whatever opportunity that created for us. Having said that, the report we're looking at today is so radically different than what I would have thought would have been out of that discussion. So I'm just, my points, and if they're as emotional as my other colleagues, I apologize, but the conflict that these are creating in our current agricultural community, no matter where we put these lands, these additional lands, it just continues to create more conflict with our existing agriculture economy. So it looks like we're making a choice, or the region's making the choice between commercial and or, healthy agriculture economy, and they're not making the right one. When I look at the amount that we're talking about, one hamlet's growing 33%. It doesn't maybe sound like a lot, but 33% is a lot for a small community. And these are neighborhoods. Another hamlet grows by 25%. Altogether, this growth represents the equal amount of an entire hamlet that's being put on us with this plan. So, I know we'll not necessarily agree on where we land with this, but it doesn't look like there's anything to me about it that's smart at this point. So I think the mayor, you were starting to lean into this, but I would certainly like to formalize what we would require of the region, with our input, certainly long before February 24th. I'd make a motion on that if we were ready to do that.
Okay, thank you. We currently have a motion on the floor, the one that was here, so we'll go to Councillor McClellan before we get into that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I mentioned a piece of property at Beckett's Bridge. I would hope somebody in staff would find out who owns that, ask the questions of the owner before we recommend. Sorry. The property at Beckett's Bridge, I would hope that somebody at staff would get in touch with, look up, find out who owns it, get in touch with them, see that they do want to get the zoning changed before we put that forward, right? As our farmer didn't know, I know my property's been changed 4 times and I've never been notified of it. And each time it's been changed, it comes in afterwards. So it's, I think we should at least go that route, find out who owns it and ask them if they're okay with that before we make that recommendation, which kind of doesn't give you a lot of time. Well, we get less than 10 days, right? So.
Okay, I'll look to the CAO for comment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, I've sort of let the discussion flow, but there were a few points that I'd like to sort of go back to and sort of reemphasize from staff's perspective. Again, the regional official plan review process has been going on for a number of years. There have been everything from urban settlement area boundary reviews, which have been ongoing, which are ongoing, which are affecting municipalities like Welland and St. Catharines and Niagara Falls in the same way that the rural settlement area review is affecting Wainfleet right now. All of these reviews are happening because the region of Niagara, as mentioned by Lindsay at the outset, has identified a potential growth within the Niagara region with a forecast of almost 694,000 people by 2050. Part of that growth to 694,000 people is intended to be captured, if you will, in the urban centers. You're not seeing any of that here. What you are seeing here is the projected growth that the region has assigned to the Township of Wainfleet, which is approximately 1,358 people over the next 30 years, essentially. And what this hamlet boundary review or settlement boundary review for Wainfleet is looking at is ensuring that there are adequate designated lands, not zoned lands, but designated lands, so that in the year 2049, which is 29 years from now, there is sufficient land designated to accommodate those extra 1,358 people here in Wainfleet. Presently, we are in a deficit position. We do not have sufficient lands designated to accommodate the population that is being forecast for us. And likewise, we don't have the lands designated to meet the job targets, which is why there are lands, for example, in Chambers Corners that council pushed and suggested to the region. This would make a good sort of perhaps job center for Wainfleet. And again, that was sort of the direction of council. In moving our recommendations to the region heard those and incorporated many, if not all of those, into the proposed adjustments. But even with those proposed ones that we provided to the region, we were 75 hectares. I want to confirm I've got right, hectares versus acres. We were 75 hectares short of the lands necessary to accommodate. And that's where the region went through our existing official plan policies and undertook investigations that would expand the hamlet boundaries to potentially accommodate that growth going out 30 years. Again, the region's efforts on this, and the reason they're coming to you at this time is they have sort of completed their studies, and right now, actually in December, this report was brought to regional council, regional planning staff for their consideration, and the regional council said, okay, it's time now to go out and share this with the public, share this with the local municipalities, and get their thoughts and their feedback on what's happening. So this is the opportunity for us to sort of provide our thoughts in return to their investigations. Yes, staff have been working in the background, but the actual final result that you see here is the final result that just became officially public less than 2 months ago. So it's here before you at this time. And again, I think the thing I want to continue to emphasize is that what this is intending to do is not rezone land. It's not attempting to, for example, lock or require somebody to change what use is going on their land. All this is doing is providing the headroom or the ability of the township for the next 30 years to be able to accommodate growth in accordance with the regional official plan and with the town's existing official plan, which itself will have to be modified once the new regional plan comes into play. So again, I guess that summarizes my comments, other than one small clarification or fact that the Bell Road property, as I understand it, that has been the sort of subject of much discussion here, is 29 hectares in size, which is about 70 acres, not 80. Just, I know it's inconsequential perhaps in the grand scheme of things, but I just wanted to set the record straight so that's recognized as well. So I guess those are my initial comments. This is your opportunity to speak to the region on your thoughts on this. But I guess one of the points I would make is if, for example, you have concern or hesitancy to sort of receive the region's recommendation regarding, for example, the Bell Road section, that's 29 acres or 70 acres of land that perhaps gets taken out of this process. The region will say to you as a council, to us as a township, okay, that 70 or that 29 hectares, if it's not going in the urban hamlet or in the hamlet of Wainfleet Village, as has been identified in the township's official plan, where in Wainfleet is there another hamlet that currently exists that can accommodate that potential growth over the next 30 years? So I guess that's a rhetorical question to some extent, and I don't think I helped the discussion very much, but I just wanted to make those, get those facts or those statements out there.
Okay, I'll thank you, Will. I'll start with Sherry. I think had her hand up first, and then we'll go to you, Councillor McCall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Lindsay. Has anybody at the region actually driven out here to take a look at the lands that they're proposing?
Through the mayor, to answer Councillor Van Vliet's question, I can't confirm that they've driven out here or not, but they have done quite an extensive evaluation that was based off the provincial criteria. So if you're talking about the Bell Road property, which I assume you are, because you mentioned earlier about the lack of access, roads, yeah, the development's going to be up to the private landowners, whether these get developed in the future or not. And the access is actually ideal for Bell Road because a lot of our hamlets are located on Highway 3, and we've run into issues with the MTO trying to provide access for new lands. So that was one of the criteria that were met for that Bell Road property, if you're talking about the access point.
Yeah. I was talking about that one too, but I'm also talking about anything out, like where Councillor McCullen's talking, like out his way. You can't grow a cactus out there. So I don't know why they aren't looking at that. That's horrible land, great to build stuff on, horrible to grow things on. So if somebody just took a drive around here and went, oh, wow, we might have made a mistake, and we as council and as, you know, citizens of Wainfleet might know what we're talking about. Like, I think that they need to maybe take a bigger picture, look at the picture, and like, we know what we're talking about. Like, we know what land is good and what land isn't good. So I have a huge problem with the Bell Road one. It needs to be somewhere else, anywhere else.
Just to that point, Councillor Van Vliet, I've been asking that as well, who's come out and looked. And I was told it's all done off provincial soil maps and all that sort of thing, and that's how it's all basically done. So, Ms. Earl, did you want to respond to that?
I'm not sure if there was another question in addition to what was asked previously, Mr. Mayor, but I don't want this to get confused with the other the prime agricultural mapping that's also being done as part of the region's official plan, as well as the core natural heritage mapping and policies. These are all separate chapters or sections of the new official plan, which we obviously have many layers of designations that are going to be updated through their municipal comprehensive review.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClellan.
So I have two comments. First one is to Councillor Van Vliet. That is the largest hamlet, the northeast end of town. In the town, that is not a hamlet. It doesn't exist, but it is the largest hamlet in town. That's done. My question now is, what if all these people are wrong? What if we get high-speed internet in here and nobody has to go to an office in Toronto and people want to start coming here? We're limited. We should have, I know Councillor Cridlin doesn't want to hear this. Yeah, I know, she's about to stroke out on me, but quite frankly, we should have more than what we're going to use. They're telling us this will just get you there. Well, what if something changes? What are we going to do, start turning people away and say you can't move to our town? How do we change this? Like, there's all kinds of land down south of number 3, right? That's, again,
okay.
Junk land.
Yep, thank you. I'll look to our CAO.
Just one comment in response to, I guess that. From a planning perspective, again, this is trying to envision or provide within an existing hamlet the necessary expansion to accommodate a portion of the anticipated growth that's coming. As much as planners like to plan, the reality is the people will always try to come up with plans that are outside of what's been planned for. There will continue to be requests for severances, for consents to sever a lot off another lot. That will all continue to happen. And who knows, depending on what happens, this land that could potentially be designated, let's stick with the Bell Road example, this land that could be designated as hamlet 30 years from now could remain untouched, continue to be farmed, and be totally unused, and we will still meet our targets by infilling lots here and there, or lots being expanded in another hamlet, or anything along those lines. What this is intended to do is sort of address the provincial, the GTA, and the regional requirements that we designate lands within a hamlet for potential growth. Again, be it residential or jobs. It's the market in the end that will drive where the lots are actually established and where the homes are actually built. This is sort of the region's best estimation based on current information available to them on where Wainfleet Village, the hamlet of Wainfleet Village, could potentially grow. I don't know if that helped or not. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClellan.
So if I could then, Mr. CAO, the land on Bell Road is not zoned residential. It's going to be for commercial. Is that correct? Agricultural commercial? It's all residential.
Residential.
Rural residential. So the only place we have that's commercial is going to be at Chambers Corners.
Perhaps I can ask the planner to speak to that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Chambers Corners and Ostrahan Corners were the parcels that were identified to be employment type uses. So not necessarily just commercial, it could be also industrial type uses there as well. Within the hamlet, the other hamlets where the residential growth is proposed, that doesn't mean we can't accommodate or do some sort of secondary planning, some community plans in these areas that would allow for mixed use types development. You might need to see some, neighborhood commercial type uses that would benefit the majority of the population that are in the hamlets proper. Could be small grocery stores. Those types of things would also be permitted. So what we need to do that is to plan ahead for that. So that's something that we might be looking at in a future work program.
So if we had somebody came into town and said, we want to put up 100,000 square foot of warehouse, where do we put it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the answer to that question was we would direct them to the employment type land uses. Those ones have the least amount of land use compatibility concerns.
So
that would be at Chambers Corners, or that would be the Ostrahan location.
So Ostrahan Corners, you're never going to get that through. The people will go through there right out of their mind. You're going to start putting 50, 80 trucks a day down that road. Come on, we got to get, something's got to be, we're smarter than that. I don't care what you're saying. You can't start running that through. But I know right now there is a serious need for industrial warehouses. And I've talked to two guys in the last week that are looking for 100,000 square feet empty space. I called Councilor Gilmore to see if there was even an old implement shed that was big enough to take it, because it's just dry storage. And there's an unbelievable shortage of space right now. We have an opportunity. You don't need sewer, you don't need big septic systems, it's just a warehouse. And we have no place to put this.
Yeah, and that originally is why we looked at Chambers Corners, and we voted on Chambers Corners, and that's here. So that's what our planner is saying. So I'm going to go to Councillor Cridlin now. She's next in line.
Very kind of you. Thank you, Mayor. Through you to all council except Councillor McClellan. I can't believe I said that. So anyway, this is. The amount of agriculture in relative terms is still very troubling, but I'm going to, through you to Lindsay, our development officer, what other alternatives are considered? So when I look at the math of growth numbers, and I mean, growth numbers are just, for me, a red herring. There's growth coming everywhere. We all are going to have to figure out much better ways to deal with growth than we have pre-COVID. So whatever we did for 20 years ago for planning, that's just not going to work in the next 20 years. But having said that, that if we're building on 1 acre lots now, and if I do the math and I do 0.8, 0.7, we have enough acres for doing what we need to do basically within the existing inventory. And again, we didn't talk much about the inventory and that availability of data, which is troubling to me. But what other things can we do other than, we've already heard that if it's not Bell Road, it's not somewhere else. So I just don't accept that. I think we have to do the work. We've been busy. We've been focused on the fire hall. We've done a lot of things that have moved work forward. We haven't leveraged the kind of expertise that's around the room to save good agriculture and put it on cactus land to, exploit the existing commercial. I mean, we're closing down commercial enterprises in the Lakeshore area, so I don't know how we can talk about, we haven't even worked on attracting commercial yet. I mean, you need another term to do that. So what kind of things can we do and just say no to Bell Road and we'll do smaller lots?
Okay, yeah, interesting question. I look to Ms. Earl to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, Councillor Cridland. Smaller lots is a great question because typically we would require a 1 hectare parcel to accommodate a private house with a private septic. With the proper hydrogeological study, that can be reduced down to 1 acre. So 1 acre is the typical size for a class 4 system and a standard house. The way that the land needs was calculated with the projected population of 7,730 people in 30 years, that's about 420 units based on the available lands that we have and that we need. So that only equates to about 14 houses a year. And I've provided you guys with a copy of the building stats over the last 3 years. So we've seen 15 new houses a year, 20 and 25 in the last 3 years. So that gives you an idea of the rate of growth that we're projecting for Wainfleet. It's actually quite less than what we've seen in the last 3 years. And with the comment on the agricultural lands and preserving the agricultural lands, Mr. Mayor is aware of this stat that the current ag land base for the township is about 92.27%. If we remove the 75 hectares of land, our ag land base would still be 91.92%. So we're not taking away a majority of our agricultural land base. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear as well.
Okay, thank you. Follow up, Councillor Cridland.
Thank you. I'm not sure if that was, maybe I've missed the math part of that. I apologize, but do we own then the regulation around the size of the lot, or does the province own the size of the lot? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's both, and the region also has policies for new lot creation in the rural ag areas. So the minimum lot size has to be sufficient size to accommodate private water and septic services. So depending on other things like hydrogeological review, there's certain highly vulnerable aquifers that have to be protected. So the lots may be big enough, but the lots may have to be bigger to accommodate the additional septics on those lands. So without those studies, the lands may only be able to obtain an additional 10 lots where, it may have been 10 for 10 acres, it might require more.
Thank you, that's much clearer, and I'll just trust technology is going to come along and be there for us. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I just want to come back to my main concern is with process and how this has happened. I think it's very unfair to, comment that, well, we should just take it back away from the property owner on the Bell Road, and because they've already been notified before we had any chance to, to comment on it. Now, if we deny it, we'll get wiped out by some acronym organization, LPAT or whatever they call themselves. We'll get wiped out anyway, and we'll end up in court because we are, quote, not the sole planning authority for the municipality. So I'll just spend a few more minutes of my already too long speech to just analyze what we know for certain. I've lived here longer than anybody in this room. When I was 10 years old, the sign at every corner of this township said 6,600 people. It said that for 40 years. Now it says 6,372. We've gone down. Yeah, we've built 10 or 15 or 20 houses a year, and our net number is going backwards. Why? Because the people that are coming here are largely retired and they don't have any children. So the growth isn't going up in population size. There's been a period when it's been negative. It may be a little bit positive now, but in 50 years, it's gone backwards from what it was. That I can tell you for sure. I looked at the sign every day when I drove in and out of the municipality. So, And I know what it says today, because I looked at it again today, like I do every day. This notion that in the next 30 years, it's going to go up 30% when it's been stagnant for 50, somebody should take a little lesson from history there. Marshville Drive, that property sat idle for 40 years, at least, maybe more. The other hamlet area in the village at the unopened end of Church Street has been not developed. Why? Because there's no access to it. And that costs a lot of money, and it takes a lot of time, and only certain people can take that kind of a project on. I spent time with the property owner before he unfortunately passed away from cancer. And I said to him, I don't think that this is, he wanted to develop it. I said, I don't think that this is something that you should try to tackle. It's too big of a project. I mean, Councilor McClellan's well aware of the resources that it takes to build roads and things like that. And so does the owner of Marshville Drive. Just ask him. He'll tell you how much it costs to put that road in there. That's why that the land is, that we've had designated, it's been sitting, it's not that it's sitting stagnant, it's being farmed. But the problem is, you've told these people now that this can become a residential area. The whole party changed for all those people. They may not develop it, but now they have this egg in the nest. That's the problem, and we didn't know about it. And that's what's really bugging me more than anything else. Like, I don't buy the region's numbers, but that's just me, and that shouldn't come as a surprise to any of you in this room or anybody on the screen. I've had it with them for a long, long time. But that's neither here nor there. I sat, the gentleman from the region sat beside Sarah, and I asked him point blank, have you gone out and looked at Wellandport? No, I haven't gone out. Never been there. Had to drive right by it almost to come from there. Didn't have a clue where it was. It takes longer to take the combine out there and go around there for 10 minutes than it's ridiculous. And they push back on it. Now all of a sudden it's all good to go and we can pave over the rest of Paradise. So
thank you, Council.
I'm done.
Thank you. I'm just going to look to just for accuracy information. I know our CAO has up the numbers that actually Wainfleet has grown here. You have that right there, Will. You were looking it up.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Statistics Canada just last week released the results of the 2021 census. And just by way of history, I think Councillor Gilmore is correct. Wainfleet has, for the most part, been fairly steady in its population. I'll note that in 2011, so that's 10 years ago, 2011, the population of Wainfleet was recorded through the census as 6,356. In 2016, the population increased by 16 people, up to 6,372. Last week, the announcement from Statistics Canada pegged our population at 6,887 people, an increase of 515 people over the course of the previous 4 years. And what that means is, based on the new numbers, again, the region continues to identify the population 30 years out as being 7,730 people. And what that means in today's date is that they're anticipating in the next 30 years a potential growth in Wainfleet of another 843 people, which, how realistic is that? I can't speak to, but based on the studies that have been done, that's the type of growth that they're trying to accommodate within the hamlet, or the boundary reviews for the hamlet areas.
Councillor McClellan.
So the one thing we keep talking about, 7,730 or 6,300, it's the makeup of the household. We went from 6 kids, 7 kids, and a mother and father to a 2-person household. And that's where the difference is. We're gonna end up, these 20 houses that were built, and 15 houses and 14 houses, we didn't gain any people, but we gained households. And that's where the problem's gonna lie. There's nobody having 5 kids or 6 kids anymore. It's 1, maybe 2. But so it's 4 people in a house, or it's a retired couple, as Terry said. That's what we're getting moving in here. So that's where our house growth is gonna be. It's gonna be the same thing. It's gonna be more retirees or empty nesters that come here because they've raised their kids, they've done, and now they want to live someplace that's a little bit peaceful and quiet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just quickly in response to that, Councillor McClellan is correct. The size of the households has sort of shown some decrease, and I believe the numbers that the region uses for its reporting amounts to 3.2 persons per household, based on some quick calculations that I've done. So, correct.
Thank you. Further,
Yeah,
Councilor McClellan?
so the other thing, and I know there's probably not a whole lot of worry about it in this community, but the only way we're going to get houses for the prices to come down is there have to be enough lots. Right now, it is ridiculous what houses are costing in this town because there are no house lots to go to. There's house lots, like I've had this conversation with Mrs. Earl. Sure, there's lots of house lots. They're not for sale. They're tied up. Like Terry said, there's no access to them, or the guys don't want to sell them because they're farming them and that's their pension. So there's lots that are out there, but you couldn't buy one for love nor money. So it doesn't do us any good.
Yeah, I'll come to you in just a second, Councilor Craig. It's an interesting situation. It's basic economics of supply and demand. And because we are 1 acre lots, we can't have too much, so the price goes up. So it's definitely an issue. Councilor Cridlin.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I like numbers as well, so when I hear these stats going, I mean, has anybody factored in there might be 400 homes in the Lakeshore area that status will change from not permanent to a permanent resident? We've not changed anything. We've just got 700 people that have moved from St. Catharines and they're permanently now retired at the lake. We don't need homes for those people. So I don't think you can look at our stats and say, you know, we're 6,300 or they're 6,800. You can't tell in the summer what our population really is. So I want to be really careful about adding more land for something that the math really hasn't been done according to Wainfleet. Thank you.
Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, everybody keeps talking about the math. All we need to do is look at the enrollment at schools, the enrollments in any kind of sports. It is nothing like it was when my kids were in school and in sports. You had almost 50 kids in grade 8 graduating. Now you have, what, 10? So it is like we're going to have more lots. That's great. But we have to attract people to get here with young families. So it's where we're putting them is the problem.
Thank you. Yeah, I just was talking on the phone. A lady phoned me the other day with an issue, and she's by herself and moved here from somewhere else in southern Ontario and was adjusting to life in Wainfleet, and she knew some other people doing the same thing. So the points about people coming here is true, for sure, and they're not big families. So, okay, so Councillor Gilmore.
All right, Mayor, one more thing, and I'll be brief. My last comment is, once you give up agricultural land, you never get it back.
Okay, so we've Mr. CAO.
I just have to throw out just one more comment as well, if I may, before leaving. And it's a question that I have, I think, posed to the manager of Community and Development Services, but I don't think we've been able to sort of come up with a conclusion. But it almost sounds, and again, some of the discussion that I've heard is that, you know, we have a hamlet of Wainfleet Village, we have Osterholm Corners, we have Chambers Corners. I almost get the sense, based on the flavor of the discussion that I've heard, is that council's almost asking about the possibility of a hamlet of cactus or a new cactus hamlet located somewhere in the municipality, perhaps in the northeast corner-ish. Again, I don't know how reasonable that is. I don't know if that's even possible. under an exercise such as this. Again, it's our understanding that this is all intended to, again, in accordance with our existing policies and the policies the region's following, dealing with existing hamlet areas and potentially expanding those boundaries. But again, that is perhaps something that we could at least make some inquiries about to sort of see where things might go in that direction. So I throw that out only as something for this council to consider as a discussion point, perhaps with the region. And I don't know if the planner can comment on that or not, but sorry for bringing that up if it's totally out of line.
I could try to answer that. So through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't think that the region, not even us, I don't think that the region has the power to create a new settlement area. I think that power may lie with the province themselves. But it's definitely something that we can monitor over the next few years and maybe address through the next municipal comprehensive review. But it may take some time and dealings with the province.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor McClellan.
If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, looks like a duck, it's a duck. And that is a hamlet if there ever was one. If you read the definition of a hamlet in the province of Ontario, it meets all the criteria.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor to receive this report for information. So I don't know what we want to do with that, or if somebody wants to, we could vote that one way or the other and do a new motion, or it's not very amendable.
Might I suggest perhaps adopting that, and then if there's a subsequent motion that you want to pass in addition to that, you certainly would be able to do so without violating any procedural bylaw processes.
So we could receive this, and then we could add on another motion to whatever comes out of the discussion. So, okay, so that motion is on the floor to receive this report for information. It's been moved and seconded, so, and I'm not going to ask about any more discussion because we already did. So, all in favor of receiving this report? Okay, that is carried. Okay, now, in regards to that, is there anyone wishing to make another motion? Councillor Cridland.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. If I don't make this motion, I don't be able to sleep with myself. I just won't be able to sleep at night. All right, so that Wainfleet Council formally requires the following changes be made to the Niagara Regional Draft Official Plan that we've seen, Appendix 4. In the Wainfleet Village Hamlet, that the Bell parcel remains outside Village Hamlet, that the parcel south of the hamlet remains outside the Village Hamlet with the exception of the small parcel to the west of Side Road 20 to permit the existing development, and that Chambers Corners Hamlet, the northeast parcel remains outside of the hamlet, however, it's amended to allow for the acres that abut Forks Road with the depth similar to the abutting properties to the west. And then we direct that the resolution goes to the Niagara region. It's a bit bolder than what we talked about, but I think it's it just reflects the amount that the region is overreaching.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that motion?
Tell me what to do. I'll second it if you read it again.
Okay, so that's seconded and discussion. Go ahead.
Sorry, I think through you, Mayor, the councillor wanted it reviewed. So,
yeah, that's discussion.
So it's the parcel that took up the most discussion on the Bell Road parcel, the, what was it, 76 acres? Right. The other parcel was the Hamlet Village, which we didn't talk about, at the south end. The whole strip there, except for the piece that's on the west side of 20. So there's a concern there that the road is not quite wide enough on the existing development, so they'll need that piece to continue the development. That's outlined in the report. And then I'm moving to Chambers Corners. And again, it's really, well, I'll read it first. It's the piece that has been proposed to the region by council, but it's amending it to make it only the amount that abuts onto Forks Road with the depth similar to the abutting properties. So it's again driven by the amount of agriculture that is in this whole plan. And also, for me, that piece is, we didn't know about the commercial land that was already in the southwest corner. So when we made that decision, we didn't have any of that information. And obviously council did decide it wants more commercial, but that wasn't available at that time. Thank you.
Okay, discussion. Councillor McCollum.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the piece of property on Bell Road, the landowner's been told by the region that the zoning's changed. That gentleman hit the lottery. What are you going to do? Go and pull a lottery ticket away from a winning ticket away from the guy now? As Councilor Gilmore said, had they spoken to us first, it would have been a different story. But you can't do that to somebody, right? It's too late. He said the cat's out of the bag. The cat's out of the bag. You can't go and pull a winning Lotto Max ticket from a guy and say, no, you can't have it. The region told him this is going to happen, right? It's too late. Like, they should have spoken to us before it happened. Like I said, there's other pieces of property that make more sense in my mind. Maybe nobody else will agree with me, but they're already sitting there. They were commercial. There's an old gas station sitting there.
Okay, thank you. I would like to get clarification from our planner, Lindsay. What is included in the letters that go out to the landowners? Like, what information is in there? Do you know? Can you speak to that, or?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I have not seen the letters that have gone out to the landowners, but I would assume that the region has identified the process by which they have identified that specific piece of parcel or that property, identified the public information sessions that the landowner can obtain or attend, and by means of which they can provide their comments. I think it might be hard to kind of pick and choose which parcels are going to go in and go out, because there was quite a significant amount of methodology that went into those parcels. And if I may speak to Councillor McClellan's comment about the existing development lots that are underutilized, those lots that have existing development, like an old gas station or an old commercial use that's vacant, those are not contemplated in part of growth management. We only look at vacant lands. So the ones that did have historical uses on them, we can definitely look at redevelopment or like a brownfield redevelopment on those sites, depending on what their designations are. But the process here for growth management is vacant lands and new lands. So the landowners know that no information has been, no decisions have been made, and that we're still during the consultation period. To answer the question about the letters.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Will.
One other comment, and again, I'll just put my clerk hat on for a moment, regarding notice and it coming to us before going to the landowners. One of the things that I want to emphasize is that, again, this is a sort of planning process under the Planning Act being undertaken by the region of Niagara. They are coming to you now with this report. That's sort of why it's before you. It was considered at the Regional Council on January 22nd. It's coming to us now. It's made its way to this council. Had they not provided notification to the affected property owners concurrently with it coming to us, then the sort of argument or situation would be that you are now discussing this other person's land without their knowledge of it being a sort of issue. So frankly, again, the process undertaken by the region is consistent with the sort of open government provisions that are contained in the Municipal Act and the Planning Act with respect to these types of matters. There is no way for you as a council to consider this short of in a meeting open to the public, such as you're dealing with it now. And the region, I think, did right by notifying the members of the public that this is something that the region is considering. And again, it's being brought before you for your input in the same way that it's before those property owners for their input. And that's sort of the political or the legislative process for that.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Cridlin has a motion on the floor. Oh, sorry, Councillor Van Vliet.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just have one quick question, Lindsay. Has West Lincoln looked at this? Do they know what their lands are being done? And are they okay with that? Because I just looked at theirs really quickly, and I know people who farm their lands, and I don't think they'd like that. I'm just wondering if they know what's going on.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor, to answer Councillor Van Vliet's question. It's my understanding that the council at West Lincoln, I lose my words today. West Lincoln is aware they are not receiving as much land into their hamlet or the settlement area boundary as Wainfleet, because they have urban areas where future growth should be directed more to the urban areas. So they're getting a smaller portion of the rural lands designated in the hamlets. So that's my understanding.
Thank you.
And if I could, just to tag on to that, and then I'll be quiet for the rest of the evening. Wainfleet is unique in Niagara region in that way. We have no urban areas. We have no urban centers. Every other municipality, including West Lincoln, do have urban centers. And again, those are sort of primary growth areas for both commercial, for job-oriented growth as well as residential growth. Because we don't have those, that's why we're dealing with the rural settlement areas.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Cridlin's motion is on the floor. And it's now time to vote on that. Anybody want it reread again, just to be crystal clear? I know Will went around and showed everybody the map to make sure that everyone understood which pieces of land were in and which were out. But if you want it read once more, I'm sure Councillor Cridlin would do that, just to be clear. No, we're all good? Okay. All those in favor of that motion? Okay, 2 opposed. That's 3-2. That motion is defeated.
Through you, Mayor. Could I just then have this added to the minutes, the motion that was defeated? Thank you.
Yes, I'm sure it's already recorded. The clerk has that down already. Thank you. Anyone else care to make another motion? Councillor McClellan.
I would like to make a motion that staff look at the northeast corner and find out what's involved in getting that zoned as a hamlet. It most definitely is a hamlet, so let's call it what it is. I'm not sure if Will wants to wordsmith this a little better, but.
Okay, we can, I see our planner's hand up, but that's a motion. Can we have a seconder to put it on the floor for discussion? Councillor Van Vliet. Okay, in discussion, and we'll look to our planner to speak to that, please.
Yeah, in the meantime, through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry. In the meantime, staff did have a chance to look into it, and the growth plan is very clearly states that the establishment of a new settlement area is prohibited. So we can't create a new hamlet, so says the province.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor McClellan.
So what do we do with small parcels of farmland that nobody wants to farm? You can't put cows, chickens, pigs, horses, anything out there because you're too close to a residence. I've already gone through this with Mrs. Earl when she was with the region. And you can't put any animals out there. You can't put any livestock. How do you call that farmland when you can't do it? You can't get a farmer to cash crop it, and you can't grow animals on it. It doesn't fit farmland.
It's definitely a problem for the future that we're not going to solve this evening, that's
Well,
most
then we
certain.
go
But
to
your
the
point's made.
Yeah. We go to the province and try and get this done, because that's wrong.
Okay, where are we? Councillor McClellan had a motion. We haven't voted on that motion yet. Or did we? Yes, we did. It was.
No, we
Through
didn't.
you,
that
Mr.
was
Mayor,
the other one. That was,
we didn't vote on it, but we did get information from the planner that the province of Ontario prohibits the establishment of new areas such as that.
So the region prohibited most of these changes 18 months ago, and now they've allowed it. So let's go to the province and at least ask the question. Because what's the worst they're going to do is say no, but let's go in and make the argument.
okay.
We're trying to save farmland here.
Yep, no.
And, right, if there's an area that's going to grow, let's have it happen.
Okay, so that's your motion then? We
Yes,
should
that we
go to the
go to the
province?
province and ask.
And have further discussion with the region and the province?
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and with the agreement of council, you'll let me do some wordsmithing to sort of put in through few whereases and wherefores and now therefores.
Okay, seconder for that, please. Councillor Gilmore. All right, any other discussion? Councillor Cridland.
Through you, Mayor, we've just had an opportunity to preserve some farmland with at least even letting the region know that we weren't happy with the Bell Road 40 acres, and we decided to not do that and not really take any other course of action to even let them know. So I don't understand why we then would spend staff resources to pursue something that's not likely to happen in the next little bit. So I'm not going to be able to support the motion, I'm sorry.
Yeah, was included in that motion, I know it needs some wordsmithing, but was to go back to the region for discussion on what we're not happy about, and the province is what I believe I heard, so. Is correct? Will?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as normal course of action, if we were to prepare a motion such as the one that Councillor McClellan has proposed, and which will be wordsmithed to recognize the sort of proposed hamlet boundary expansion of Wainfleet, we will certainly copy the region on that, which should sort of establish your concerns as a council regarding the sort of impacts on, I'll call it prime agricultural land, in moving that into a hamlet designation area.
Okay, Councillor McClellan.
Just one thing. So, Will, when you get it all dressed up, you'll send it to all of us so we can, yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, so that motion is on the floor, and all in favor? And opposed? And that motion is carried. Okay, we'll see where that takes us. Thank you, that was very spirited discussion on that. Yeah, we can certainly take a 5-minute break. I was thinking of that, 9 o'clock, so we'll take a recess. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We just had a short recess. And we're going to move into the fire staff reports, fourth quarter review, and I'll look to our chief who's standing by to give that report, please.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. The first report before you this evening is the fourth quarter report for 2021. Just some highlights. We go over the human resources. We had through an organizational review and a retirement, we had to undertake the selection process for a new assistant, and that was completed, and that person started January of this year. As always, we undertake our recruit program. The beginning of the recruitment process starts in September and works through. And I'm happy to announce that as of January 1st, we've added another 4 recruits to our roster for 2022. Some of the other things in the report, there's a joint recruit initiative that was started with a recruitment video with Wainfleet partaking in that. And you can see some photos of the video shoot that occurred one night in Wainfleet. Our health and safety committee remains active, reviewing our operational guidelines and conducting our workplace inspections. One of which was the training house that we've been using on Forks Road for quite some time. It has since been deemed unsafe, and it is a facility that we're no longer able to use. So that will require us to look long and hard for alternative training facilities and resources. Next, we have our fire prevention and public education. As things kind of open back up, we have been able to attend more and more events, including Fire Prevention Week, Carbon Monoxide Week. We were able to attend the Wainfleet Christmas Vendors Market. And you can see that we did perform some inspections and enforcement through those months. Moving into operations, part of our rural water supply program is the development of impounded water or dry hydrants. We do have some that were pre-existing, as you can see on Mimi Court, Park Street, and the new one on Jacobs Lane in Marshville. And one of the things that we've done is identified those dry hydrants with red signs, red address signs. So in the event that we have to call for mutual aid, we're able to send those tankers to an actual address instead of having them look for them. So that's something we've added. You're also able to see the responses for those 3 months. The truck, the old 2005 Chevrolet was finally sold through Gov Deals, and that sale closed in January of 2022. And then you can see through our capital projects in facilities, they have been completed, and you've got some before and after photos of Station 4 after some of the work was completed there. So quite a transformation there. And then on page 7, we go through our training. Both our regular and annual, which this year was our live fire training was conducted in Niagara Falls instead of Fort Erie. And now you'll also see we continue with our training and testing and certification, with which we hosted another NFPA test in November of this year, with several firefighters participating and completing different certifications. And I do want to highlight that we also received a $5,000 grant from Enbridge in December of this year, which went towards training materials for our firefighters. Some of the priorities for this coming quarter, or this quarter that we're in right now, is our recruit training program, which we're right in the middle of right now. We will continue to look for alternative training facilities, right in the middle of developing the 2022 capital and operating budgets. As we continue to work on our central fire station. And one of the things that's required by the province by 2024 is that we complete a community risk assessment. So that will be a project that we will be undertaking starting in 2022 in preparation for that deadline. So certainly if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief. Can I have a mover and a seconder to put that fire report on the floor? Councillor McClellan and Councillor Cridland. Any questions or discussion? Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you for the report, Chief. One of my pet peeves is the burn calls. Can you maybe just comment if there's really any change, or is that getting better? I know the numbers look to be a little bit stable, but are we making headway on those kinds of calls? Thank you.
Burning complaints, I mean, it ebbs and flows every year. It all depends on the season we have. I mean, you can see during the month of May, that's typically right around the time when, May long weekend occurs. We have, the first long weekend, people come in, they're having fires. In this particular case, I know the quarry was quite problematic. The beginning of the year with quite a few going on in there. I don't see this as trending upward. I do see it, it is more than the year before, but as you recall, through March through to June of 2020, everybody stayed home anyways and didn't really get into that. I will say, though, that we did notice through our online burn permit system, and for those who have them, every time the fire risk or the fire weather changes, we send out notifications through the system, and every permit holder receives a notification of what the fire risk is. And I will say that when fire risk is high or extreme, and those notifications are sent out, we do see a huge reduction in the number of daily fires occurring across the municipality during those times. So, I mean, from a public education and risk reduction, I do believe that system's working.
Okay, follow up, Councillor Criddle?
No, just thank you for that, Chief.
Okay, any other questions, Councillor McClellan?
Just one quick question. Chief, you mentioned the quarry was a problem. That's Quarry Road, MPCA quarry?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, okay, I just wanted to clarify that. I don't want business getting in trouble.
No, my apologies.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, the motion is on the floor to receive this report. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And staying with our chief, we'll now go to the firefighter certification memo and ask the chief to speak to that, please.
So as council may recall, in 2016 through 2018, there was a regulation that had passed at the time regarding firefighter certification. That regulation was brought in by the previous Liberal government and was subsequently put in abeyance. Our current, in 2018, our current Solicitor General on January 19th announced that firefighter certification, mandatory certification, was coming back. That draft regulation was published on January 28th and is currently open for public comment until February 28th. So during that time, the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs has held several information sessions for fire chiefs, so that way we understand what the impacts to our services will be. I will say, though, that in this round, as opposed to the previous one, there has been some strong engagement into the development of this particular regulation. And as such, the Office of the Fire Marshal is conducting technical briefings, not only with fire departments, fire chiefs, but also with the heads of councils and CAOs to kind of highlight how best to implement this new regulation. I will say, though, I mean, the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs is, we've been advocating for this regulation. In the province of Ontario, a police officer is a police officer, a paramedic, paramedic, and a firefighter is a firefighter. So, certification is something that specifically to a standard is the bare minimum that we should be meeting. And at the end of the day, council sets the level of service. And this is a way to ensure that our fire services are in fact meeting those levels of service as set by council. So in response to that, I mean, if you go back to the spring of 2020 last year, you'll recall that the fire college or the Office of the Fire Marshal announced that they were closing the fire college. So not only are we now down one training opportunity or one method of training our firefighters, but now we have mandatory certification. So one of the things that the office or the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs has brought about is a request for the provincial government and the finance minister to include an annual grant for firefighter training as part of the provincial budget to help offset these costs. So I've attached both the draft regulation and the letter by the OAFC that's going to the Minister of Finance. which I found out has the submission deadline has been extended. So there may be some wording changes to that letter. But I certainly would recommend that, council support and move to also request the province request that grant annually for our continued training. If there's any questions on this one.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So look for a mover and a seconder for the motion. The memorandum from the fire chief respecting the firefighter certification be received, and that council requests that the Ontario government create an annual funding grant to offset the increased training costs due to the introduction of mandatory minimum training standards for Ontario firefighters. Mover and a seconder for that, Councillor Gilmore, Councillor Van Vliet, and discussion. Councillor McClellan.
Just one question through the chief. So I take it there's no chance they'll ever open up the fire college again. It'll just go down to the local municipalities and in towns?
No, it's my suspicion that the province will likely offset their debt with the sale of that property.
What is estimated cost now, additional cost per firefighter for this certification? Any idea on that?
So I will say, since 2018, Wainfleet has been dedicated to training and certifying our firefighters to the NFPA standards. So with regards to firefighter 1 and 2, hazmat operations, pumper operations, we're in good shape. It's built right into our collective agreement with our volunteers that as they move through the classifications or as they hold officers' ranks, they're already trained and certified to that standard. When you look at the draft reg, where we may get into additions will be the technical rescue piece. So auto extrications, even shore-based water rescue, some of the low-angle stuff. These are all things that currently we do as a limited service, as an awareness level, and will be required to be certified to. In the draft reg, those are set out that we have a 6-year compliance time. So we're able to phase in those trainings, develop those programs, and get our firefighters certified before that deadline for sure. But for the initial implementation, I'm happy to say that Wainfleet is in very good shape, as it was something that we had dedicated to 4 years ago.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, motion's on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? None? That's carried. Thank you. And one more for the fire chief, the Central Fire Station construction tender. Go ahead, Chief.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. This is just an update to council. As directed, the project manager was selected and has been conducting the review of the project and working with the project team and the prime consultant. On February 7th, the prime consultant issued a letter to the pre-qualified contractors that the construction tender was scheduled to be issued, which was issued on February 11th. As of this morning, there was a site meeting for all the bidders to attend. I was present at that, and we had 5 of the 7 present. We will be issuing an addenda likely tomorrow at some point. Several of the bidders have requested that the bid period close, that closure date is extended, which will mean that we will not be able to report the results of that to the March 8th meeting. So there will have to be another date that comes forward. So I just wanted to provide council an update as to where we're at with that tender process.
Okay, thank you. We have a mover seconder to put that on the floor, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Cridland, and discussion, questions. Okay, seeing none. All in favor of that? Opposed? None. That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, the next item, I will excuse myself. It's the pecuniary interest on the planning report. So, Councillor McClellan.
No, I don't. They told me I can stay here. This is a memorandum transfer of part of abandoned railway corridor. Ms. Earl, would you like to give the brief overview?
Yes, certainly. So back in December, staff was directed by council to continue to receive and process applications for the disposal of the abandoned rail corridor that's been kind of on the books for quite a while now. We have received an application from Kevin and Lynn Gibson to purchase a portion, that being parts 5 and 6 on the reference plan. So really the bylaw is to just authorize the mayor and deputy clerk to execute the documents required to complete that transaction.
So the motion is that a memorandum for the planner respecting the transfer of part of the abandoned railway corridor be received for information. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councilor Quinlan, Councilor Gilmore. Any discussions? Then can I have a vote on this? In favor, in favor, in favor. That's carried. Look at that, huh? Do I got to do another one? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Now, review of correspondence, and correspondence C 2022-33 was pulled by Councillor Van Vliet, who's looking to receive and support a motion passed by St. Catharines City Council respecting violence, harassment, intimidation against elected officials and government employees. And Councillor Van Vliet, would you like to speak to that, please?
I wasn't going to, but I guess I will. I'd like everybody to support this. The acts of violence and harassment that have been going on at the region, locally, I don't know if anything's happened to anybody here, and of course across the country, is just, I don't understand what's going on with people. It might be frustration from the pandemic, which we all understand, but even around this horseshoe, we have different views and different opinions, but when we walk out that door, we're still friends. And I just think it's unacceptable, and I think that we really need to support this.
Thank you. Would you like to read that motion, or? Okay, that I'll have it here in front of me.
Okay.
The council receive and support the City of St. Catharines motion respecting the acts of violence, harassment, intimidation against elected officials and government employees. Mover seconder for that, please. Councillor Gilmore, Councillor McClellan. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. We'll now go into our bylaws. And I can do the first one. Would you like to do them, Madam Clerk? And then I'll excuse myself for the one. Thank you.
Yep, so the first block is, the motion is that the following bylaws be read and passed this 15th day of February 2022. Bylaw number 10, 2022, being a bylaw to delegate financial and staffing authority to the Chief Administrative Officer for the period of nomination day until the end of term of office. Bylaw number 11, 2022, being a bylaw to appoint a municipal bylaw enforcement officer for the Township of Wainfleet 22.
This, and
2022, being a bylaw to authorize the transfer by the Corporation of the Township of Wainfleet in favor of applicants for the abandoned rail corridor, be read and passed this 15th day of February 2022. So that's moved by Councillor Gilmore, seconded by Councillor Cridland.
Yeah. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, can I have a vote? In favor. That's carried. I thought you were going to read the Enbridge one with it and then get it done, but it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any notices of motion this evening?
Mr. Mayor, through to council, there is one additional bylaw that we're hoping to give final reading to. It is the franchise agreement with Enbridge that was referenced in the report earlier this evening. And what we are asking is that bylaw number
13.
The clerk has it.
Will you read it, Madam Clerk?
We'll do the third reading of bylaw number 13, being the franchise agreement of the Township of Wainfleet.
Okay. Second. Moved and seconded. Thank you. Councillor Cridland and Councillor McClone. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. No further notices of motion. Okay, we'll have a motion to move into closed session, please, to discuss Section 239-2C Municipal Act 2001, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality, one item, a property acquisition matter. B, item under Section 239-2D of the Municipal Act 2001, labor relations or employee negotiations, one item, a staffing matter. And C, minutes of the closed meeting of council held January the 4th, 2022. Mover and a seconder for to go into close, Councillor Gilmore and Councillor Cridland. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor. And thank you. We'll move into closed session. Thank you.